Welcome back, my friend. Today we begin a powerful journey together. A journey about money, freedom, mindset, and success. Many people work hard every day. They wake up early, they go to work, they feel tired, but at the end of the month, they still worry about money. Why does this happen? Why do some people stay poor even when they work so hard? And why do others become rich even without working all day? The answer is not only hard work. The answer is knowledge. Today, we will learn one of the most important lessons about money through the famous story called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This story changed millions of lives around the world, and maybe it can change yours too. The author of this story is Robert Kiyosaki. When Robert was young, he had two fathers. Not two real fathers, but two father figures. One was his real father. Robert called him Poor Dad. Poor Dad was highly educated. He worked very hard. He had a good job. People respected him. He believed in one thing: study hard, get good grades, find a safe job, work hard your whole life. This was the advice many parents give their children. But there was another man in Robert's life. Robert called him Rich Dad. Rich Dad was different. He did not have a high education. He did not wear expensive suits. But he understood something very important. He understood money. Rich Dad believed schools teach many subjects, but schools do not teach financial education. He said something powerful to Robert. The poor and middle class work for money. The rich make money work for them. At first, Robert did not understand this sentence. He thought everybody worked for money. Isn't that normal? But slowly, Rich Dad started teaching him important lessons. One day, Robert noticed something strange. Poor Dad was always stressed about bills. He worried about money all the time. Even with a good salary, he struggled financially. But Rich Dad looked calm and confident. He did not seem afraid of money problems. Robert became curious. He asked Rich Dad, "Why are you never worried about money?" Rich Dad smiled and answered, "Because I understand how money works." That answer changed Robert's life forever. Rich Dad explained that most people spend their entire lives working for money, but they never learn how money actually works. They earn money, then they spend it, then they work again. It becomes a cycle, a trap. Rich Dad called this trap the rat race. Imagine this. A young man gets a job. He feels happy because he earns money. Soon, he buys a car. Then he buys a bigger phone. Later, maybe a bigger house. But now he has more bills, more payments, more stress. So he works harder. Then he earns more money. But he also spends more money. And the cycle continues forever. Rich Dad explained something very important. It is not how much money you make, it is how much money you keep. Most people never become financially free because their expenses grow every time their income grows. Robert listened carefully. For the first time in his life, he started questioning everything he learned about money. Was working hard enough? Was getting a safe job enough? Or was there another path to freedom? Rich Dad wanted Robert to understand one important difference: the difference between assets and liabilities. He explained it simply. An asset puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. For example, if you buy something that earns money for you, that is an asset. But if you buy something that only creates more expenses, that is a liability. Most people buy liabilities and think they are assets. That is why they stay poor. Rich Dad said the rich focus on buying assets first: businesses, investments, real estate, skills, things that continue making money even while you sleep. Robert started understanding something powerful. Money itself is not the problem. The real problem is the lack of financial education. And this lesson opened a completely new world in his mind. Part 2 continues with the powerful lesson about fear, greed, and escaping the rat race forever.
Rich Dad looked at Robert and said something that sounded simple, but it completely changed the way he thought about life. Most people are controlled by two emotions: fear and greed. Robert listened carefully. Rich Dad explained that fear makes people stay in jobs they hate. They fear losing money. They fear paying bills late. They fear failing. So they choose safety over freedom. Every morning, millions of people wake up tired, not because they love their jobs, but because they are afraid to lose their paycheck. Rich Dad called this the fear cycle. Fear pushes people to work harder, but instead of becoming free, they become more dependent on money. Then Rich Dad explained greed. Greed makes people think more money will solve all their problems. So when they earn more, they spend more. A bigger car, a more expensive phone, luxury clothes, a bigger house. For a short moment, they feel successful. But later, the bills arrive, and suddenly they need even more money. Rich Dad smiled and said, "People spend their lives chasing things they don't truly need." Robert started understanding something important. Many people are not poor because they earn too little. They are poor because they spend too much. Rich Dad then asked Robert a powerful question. What happens if your job disappears tomorrow? Robert stayed silent. Most people only have one source of income, their salary. If that salary stops, their entire life becomes unstable. This is why Rich Dad believed financial freedom was so important. Financial freedom means your assets generate enough money to cover your life expenses. When that happens, you no longer depend completely on a job. You gain freedom. Freedom to choose your life. Freedom to spend time with family. Freedom to follow your dreams. Rich Dad explained that rich people focus on building assets first. Poor and middle-class people often buy liabilities first. This difference changes everything. Imagine two friends. The first friend receives extra money and immediately buys expensive shoes and gadgets. The second friend uses the same money to invest in learning a skill or buying an asset. Years later, their lives look completely different. One still struggles financially. The other slowly builds wealth and freedom. Rich Dad wanted Robert to understand that every financial decision matters. Even small choices shape your future. Then Rich Dad shared another powerful lesson. The rich ask different questions. Poor people often say, "I can't afford it." But rich people ask, "How can I afford it?" This small change is powerful. When you say, "I can't," your brain stops thinking. But when you ask, "How can I?" your mind starts searching for solutions. Rich Dad trained Robert to think differently. Instead of focusing on problems, focus on opportunities. One day, Rich Dad gave Robert a challenge. He said, "For 1 month, watch how people spend money." Robert started observing carefully. He noticed something shocking. Many people bought things to impress others, not because they truly needed them. Some people looked rich on the outside, but were deeply in debt inside. Rich Dad explained that true wealth is often invisible. Real rich people focus on ownership. They own businesses. They own investments. They own assets that continue producing income. And because of this, their money grows over time. Rich Dad then introduced Robert to another important idea: passive income. Passive income is money that continues coming even when you are not working. For example, money from investments, rental property income, business profits, dividends. Rich Dad explained that wealthy people build systems that continue earning money for them. That is why they are not trapped in the rat race forever. Robert felt excited. For the first time, he realized there might actually be another way to live. Not a life controlled by fear. Not a life controlled by endless bills. But a life built on freedom and smart decisions. Still, Robert had one big fear inside him. What if I fail? Rich Dad looked at him calmly and answered, "Failure is part of learning." He explained that many people never become successful because they are too afraid to make mistakes. But every successful person fails many times before winning. The difference is simple. Poor people fear failure. Successful people learn from failure. Rich Dad told Robert, "The most important thing is not avoiding mistakes. The most important thing is learning from them." That lesson stayed deeply inside Robert's heart. And slowly, his mindset about money, success, and life began to change forever. Part 3 continues with the powerful lessons about assets, investing, daily habits, and how ordinary people can slowly build wealth step by step. great, I need it." Robert could feel his mind changing, little by little. Before meeting Rich Dad, he believed success meant getting a secure job and working hard forever. But now, he was starting to understand a completely different world. A world where money could work for you. One afternoon, Rich Dad invited Robert for another lesson. This time, he drew something simple on paper, a small chart. On one side, he wrote, assets. On the other side, he wrote, liabilities. Then he looked at Robert and asked, "Do you know why most people stay poor?" Robert shook his head. Rich Dad answered, "Because they buy liabilities and believe they are assets." Robert looked confused. Rich Dad explained carefully, "An asset puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. Simple." But most people never learn this difference. For example, a car may look like wealth, but every month it needs fuel, repairs, insurance, and maintenance. That means money keeps leaving your pocket. So in many cases, a car is a liability. A big expensive house can also become a liability if the expenses are too high. But a small rental property that earns monthly income can become an asset. Rich Dad smiled and said, "The rich buy assets first. The poor buy liabilities first." This lesson shocked Robert. He suddenly realized why so many people looked successful, but were secretly struggling financially. They spent money trying to look rich instead of becoming rich. Rich Dad continued the lesson. Real wealth is built quietly. Many wealthy people do not show off. Instead, they focus on growing their investments and businesses. They think long-term. Rich Dad then taught Robert about investing. At first, Robert thought investing was only for rich people, but Rich Dad disagreed. He explained that anyone could begin learning. Even small amounts of money can grow over time if used wisely. He gave Robert an example. Imagine two people. The first person spends $50 every week on entertainment and unnecessary shopping. The second person invests $50 every week into learning, stocks, or a small business idea. After many years, the difference becomes massive. One person has memories of spending. The other has built financial growth and opportunities. Rich Dad explained the power of consistency. You do not become rich overnight. You become rich through smart habits repeated for years. Robert started understanding that financial freedom is not magic. It is discipline, patience, learning, and good decisions repeated again and again. Then Rich Dad shared another important habit. Pay yourself first. Robert looked surprised. Most people pay bills first. Then they spend what remains. Usually, nothing remains. But Rich Dad taught something different. Whenever you earn money, save and invest a part first before spending, even if the amount is small. This habit slowly builds financial strength. Rich Dad explained that many people say, "I will save money later when I earn more." But that day often never comes. Because when income increases, expenses usually increase too. That is why discipline matters more than income. Then Rich Dad taught Robert about opportunity. He said wealthy people see opportunities everywhere because they train their minds differently. Most people walk past opportunities every day without noticing them. Why? Because they are too busy worrying, complaining, or surviving. Rich Dad told Robert to start thinking like an owner instead of a consumer. When you see a business, ask yourself how it makes money. When you see a successful company, ask yourself what problem it solves. Train your mind to look for value and opportunity. Slowly, Robert began observing the world differently. A small shop, an empty building, a local business, a simple service. Everywhere he looked, he started seeing possibilities. Rich Dad smiled proudly because Robert was beginning to think like an investor. But the journey was not always easy. Sometimes Robert felt afraid. Sometimes he doubted himself. And many people around him criticized his new mindset. Some said investing was risky. Others said he should focus only on getting a stable job. Even his poor dad worried about him. But Rich Dad gave him important advice. Most people speak from fear, not knowledge. That sentence stayed in Robert's mind for a long time. Rich Dad explained that society often teaches people to avoid risk completely. But avoiding all risk can also be dangerous. Because if you never learn financial skills, you remain dependent forever. Rich Dad believed education was the most powerful investment of all. Not only school education, financial education, business education, life education. He encouraged Robert to keep learning every single day. Read books, learn skills, study successful people, understand money, because knowledge reduces fear. The more you understand something, the less afraid you become. Robert finally understood something powerful. Wealth is not only about money, it is about freedom, choices, confidence, and the ability to live life on your own terms. And for the first time in his life, that future no longer felt impossible. Part 4 continues with the powerful final lessons about self-discipline, failure, mindset, action, and the true meaning of financial freedom.
Robert's lessons with Rich Dad were changing him deeply. He no longer saw money the same way. He no longer believed a paycheck alone could create freedom. Now he understood something important. Your mindset creates your future. One evening, Rich Dad sat quietly beside Robert and said, "Most people dream about success, but very few take action." Robert listened carefully. Rich Dad explained that many people wait forever. They wait for the perfect time, the perfect idea, the perfect opportunity. But the perfect moment rarely comes. Successful people start before they feel ready. Rich Dad gave Robert an example. Imagine two friends. The first says, "I will start investing when I earn more money." The second starts immediately with a very small amount. 10 years later, the second friend has experience, confidence, and growing investments. The first friend is still waiting. Rich Dad smiled and said, "The future belongs to people who take action." That sentence stayed inside Robert's heart. Then Rich Dad began teaching another powerful lesson. Failure is not the enemy. Most people fear failure so much that they never even try. But every successful person fails many times. Business owners fail, investors fail, writers fail, entrepreneurs fail. Failure is part of growth. Rich Dad explained that mistakes are lessons. When a child learns to walk, they fall many times, but they continue trying. Eventually, they learn. Money works the same way. If you fail once, it does not mean your journey is over. It means you are learning. Rich Dad looked directly at Robert and said, "Winners are not people who never fail. Winners are people who never quit." Robert slowly realized that courage is more important than comfort. Most people choose comfort, a safe routine, a predictable life. But comfort can become a prison if it stops you from growing. Rich Dad wanted Robert to build confidence through action. Even small action matters. Learning one new skill, saving a small amount, reading one book, starting one idea. Small actions repeated daily create massive change over time. Then Rich Dad talked about discipline. He believed discipline was one of the most important qualities for success. Without discipline, money disappears quickly. Many people earn good salaries but still remain broke because they lack control over spending. Rich Dad explained that wealthy people usually think carefully before buying unnecessary things. Instead of spending first, they invest first. Instead of chasing status, they chase freedom. Robert admired this way of thinking. It felt different from the world around him. Everywhere he looked, people were trying to impress others. New clothes, new cars, expensive lifestyles. But behind those appearances, many people carried stress and debt. Rich Dad taught Robert something powerful. True wealth is peace of mind. Not showing off, not pretending, not competing with others. Real wealth means having freedom over your time and your choices. Rich Dad also believed learning should never stop. The moment you stop learning, you stop growing. He encouraged Robert to stay curious forever. Learn about business, learn about investments, learn communication skills, learn leadership. Because knowledge creates opportunity, and opportunity creates freedom. One day, Robert asked Rich Dad, "What is the real purpose of becoming rich?" Rich Dad smiled warmly before answering. "It is not only about money. Money is only a tool. The real goal is freedom.
freedom to spend time with people you love, freedom to follow your dreams, freedom to help others, freedom to live life without constant fear. That answer touched Robert deeply. For the first time, he understood that financial freedom was not about greed. It was about creating a better life, a life with purpose, peace, growth, and generosity. Rich Dad also believed successful people should help others grow. He said when you create value for others, opportunities return to you in unexpected ways. Helping people, teaching people, supporting people. These things build strong relationships and meaningful success. Years later, Robert looked back and realized how much these lessons transformed his life. He learned that wealth begins inside the mind before it appears in the bank account. He learned that fear can be defeated through knowledge and action.
He learned that financial freedom is possible for ordinary people willing to think differently. And most importantly, he learned that success is a journey, not a destination. Now, as this story comes to an end, there is one final lesson for you. No matter where you are today, you can change your future. You can start learning. You can start saving. You can start growing. Even one small step today can completely change your life tomorrow. Remember this forever. The world is full of opportunities. But opportunities only change the lives of people who are brave enough to take action. Your future is still being written. And maybe, today is the day your new story begins. Years passed, but Rich Dad's lessons never left Robert's mind. Every lesson became part of the way he thought, worked, and lived. While many people chased quick money and temporary success, Robert focused on something deeper: financial intelligence. He understood now that becoming rich was not about luck. It was about learning skills that most people ignore. One afternoon, Rich Dad asked Robert a question. "What do you think is the most valuable asset in the world?" Robert thought carefully. Was it gold? Land? A successful business? Rich Dad smiled and shook his head. The most valuable asset is your mind. He explained that money can disappear, businesses can fail, markets can crash. But if you have knowledge and the ability to solve problems, you can always rebuild your life. This lesson became one of the most powerful lessons Robert ever learned. Rich Dad explained that poor people often focus only on working for money, but wealthy people focus on building skills, communication skills, leadership skills, sales skills, investment knowledge, business understanding. These skills create opportunities everywhere. Rich Dad believed one important thing: the more value you bring to the world, the more successful you become. Robert realized that successful people are usually good at solving problems for others. A business succeeds because it helps people. A teacher succeeds because they share knowledge. An investor succeeds because they understand opportunities. Everything is connected to value. Then Rich Dad talked about excuses. He said many people stay stuck because they always find reasons not to act. I don't have enough money. I'm too young. I'm too old. I'm afraid. I don't know how. Rich Dad explained that excuses protect people from discomfort, but they also block growth. Successful people are not fearless. They simply act despite fear. Robert remembered how nervous he felt when learning about money for the first time. At the beginning, everything seemed difficult. Investing sounded risky. Business seemed confusing. Financial freedom felt impossible. But step by step, his confidence grew. Why? Because action creates confidence. The more he learned, the less fear controlled him. Rich Dad then shared another important truth. Your environment shapes your future. If you spend time with negative people who complain all day, your mindset slowly becomes negative too. But if you spend time with people who think positively, learn constantly, and chase growth, you begin growing as well. That is why Rich Dad encouraged Robert to surround himself with ambitious and disciplined people. People who inspired him to become better. Then came another life-changing lesson. Rich Dad told Robert, never stop investing in yourself. Many people spend thousands of dollars on entertainment and luxury items, but refuse to spend money on learning new skills. Rich Dad believed self-education gives the greatest return in life. Books, courses, mentors, experiences. These things can completely transform a person's future. Robert realized that education does not end after school. Real learning continues forever. Then Rich Dad talked about time. He explained that time is more valuable than money. Money lost can return, but time lost never comes back. This is why financially free people focus on building systems and assets that give them more freedom over their time. Rich Dad asked Robert another important question. What kind of life do you truly want? Not what society expects, not what other people want, but what truly makes you happy. Robert thought deeply. He realized many people spend their entire lives chasing goals they never personally chose. They follow the crowd without asking themselves what they truly want. Rich Dad explained that financial freedom gives people the power to design their own lives, to choose their work, to choose their lifestyle, to choose their future. That is the real meaning of wealth. Not just having money in the bank, but having control over your life. As the sun slowly began to set, Rich Dad shared one final lesson with Robert. Your future depends on the decisions you make every day. Small habits become your future. Saving a little, learning daily, thinking positively, taking action consistently. These small actions may seem unimportant today, but over many years, they create extraordinary results. Robert finally understood something powerful. Success is not created in one single moment. It is created through daily discipline, patience, and growth. And as he looked back on his journey, Robert felt grateful, because Rich Dad had not only taught him how to build wealth, he had taught him how to think differently, how to act bravely, and how to create a meaningful life. Now the message becomes yours, no matter your age, no matter your background, no matter your current situation. You can begin today. Learn one new thing, take one small action, improve one habit. Because every great future begins with one small step. And maybe that step starts right now. Robert's journey did not end with learning about money. In many ways, that was only the beginning. As he grew older, he started noticing something important about the world. Most people spend their entire lives chasing security, a safe job, a monthly paycheck, a predictable routine. But deep inside, many of them are unhappy. They feel trapped. Rich Dad once told Robert, "Job security is often an illusion." At first, Robert did not fully understand. But later, he saw companies close, workers lose jobs, economies change suddenly, and he realized something powerful. Depending on only one source of income can be dangerous. That is why Rich Dad believed in creating multiple streams of income. Income from investments, income from businesses, income from assets. He explained that true freedom comes when your survival no longer depends on one paycheck. Robert started understanding why wealthy people think differently. Instead of asking, "How much money can I earn?" they ask, "How many income streams can I build?" This small shift changes everything. Rich Dad encouraged Robert to think creatively. Maybe one day he could own a small business. Maybe he could invest in property. Maybe he could build something online. The goal was not instant riches. The goal was freedom and stability. Then Rich Dad taught another important lesson. Most people are too busy looking rich to actually become rich. Robert noticed this everywhere. People buying expensive things to impress others. People taking loans for luxury lifestyles. People competing endlessly with each other. But Rich Dad believed real confidence does not come from showing off. It comes from independence. He explained that many wealthy people live simple lives because they understand the difference between appearance and reality. Some people look rich, but are drowning in debt. Others look ordinary, but quietly own businesses, investments, and assets. Rich Dad smiled and said, "Never judge wealth by appearance alone." Then he taught Robert about patience. In today's world, many people want fast success, fast money, fast fame, fast results. But wealth usually grows slowly, like planting a tree. At first, nothing seems to happen. But underground, the roots are growing stronger every day. Eventually, the tree becomes powerful and stable. Success works the same way. The habits you build today shape the life you live tomorrow. Rich Dad wanted Robert to stay patient during difficult times.
Because every successful journey includes obstacles. There will be failures, criticism, doubt, fear. But those things are temporary. If you continue learning and improving, you continue growing. Robert remembered how scared he once felt about investing and taking risks. But now, he realized courage is not the absence of fear. Courage means moving forward even when fear exists. Then Rich Dad spoke about happiness. He explained that many people believe money alone creates happiness, but he disagreed. Money can provide comfort and opportunities, but true happiness comes from purpose, freedom, and meaningful relationships. Rich Dad believed the best life is one where you have enough freedom to enjoy your time, help others, and follow your passions. That is real success, not just money in a bank account. Robert admired this philosophy deeply because he understood now that wealth should improve life, not control life. Then Rich Dad gave Robert one final challenge. Never stop growing. Keep learning. Keep improving. Keep challenging yourself, because life rewards people who continue evolving. Robert looked back at everything he had learned. The rat race, assets and liabilities, fear and greed, discipline and investing, patience and mindset. Every lesson connected together like pieces of a puzzle. And finally, Robert understood the biggest lesson of all. Financial freedom is not only about becoming rich, it is about becoming stronger mentally, smarter financially, braver emotionally, and wiser in life.
As the years passed, Robert shared these lessons with millions of people around the world through Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because he wanted others to understand something important. No matter where you begin, your future can change. You are not trapped forever. One good decision can change your direction. One new habit can change your future. One lesson can transform your mindset forever. And maybe today, this story became that lesson for you. So remember this. Start small. Stay disciplined. Learn constantly. Take action bravely. And never underestimate the power of changing the way you think. Because once your mindset changes, your entire life can change with it. And now, my friend, our journey comes to an end. But maybe your new journey is only beginning. Today, you learned something powerful. Money is not only about working hard, it is about thinking differently. Most people spend their lives trapped in fear. Fear of failure, fear of losing money, fear of change. But the people who build freedom are the people who choose growth over fear. Robert Kiyosaki learned that true wealth does not begin in the wallet, it begins in the mind. The moment you start learning, the moment you start taking action, your future begins to change. You do not need to become rich overnight. You only need to start. Start learning, start saving, start building better habits. Start believing that a different future is possible for you. Because small actions repeated every day create extraordinary results over time. Remember this forever. The rich are not always the smartest people in the room. Often they are simply the people who never stopped learning, growing, and trying again. There will be challenges. There will be mistakes. There will be moments of doubt. But every step forward matters. Every lesson matters. And every decision you make today is shaping the life you will live tomorrow. So do not wait for the perfect time. Do not wait until you feel completely ready. Your future is built by the actions you take now. Maybe one small decision today can completely transform your life years from now. And most importantly, never forget the true meaning of wealth. Real wealth is freedom. Freedom to live peacefully. Freedom to spend time with people you love. Freedom to follow your dreams. Freedom to live life on your own terms. That is the greatest success of all. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If this story inspired you, then keep learning, keep growing, and never stop believing in yourself. Because your story is still being written, and the next chapter could change everything.